Hello everyone, it's Danny. Okay, so today we will discuss about quarantining new orchids, and this is because my viewer Astrid has asked me if I usually do this and how I usually do this. And the answer is yes, I do quarantine all my new orchids, and as you might know, this desk corner here is the place where all my new orchids go. This is until I figure out if they're okay, if they have pests and so on. So for me, quarantining orchids is a way of limiting a pest infestation. Because the orchids are new, actually don't know where they've been, if they have pests and so on, sometimes crawlers can hide from your eye. So for a few weeks or a few months, depends on the orchid, I keep them here separate and well away from my other orchids, which do not have pests, theoretically, at least. So yeah, my main reason for quarantining these orchids is just to figure out if there's something wrong with them. My main concern actually is transmission of pests, and I'll show you what I mean. Do you remember this orchid? Alrighty, looky here. Do you see these guys? Hopefully I can focus. These are aphids. And yeah, I just noticed them, although this orchid is about 1.5 weeks old. So only now did I notice these two aphids. I don't seem to find any more, but these are enough to multiply and actually infect other orchids. So again, my main concern is pest infestation to my other orchids. Now, another reason why I quarantine them is because they might suffer from some diseases, bacterial infections, fungal infections, and so on, which again I do not want to transmit to my other orchids. Another thing that I do is that I never ever water these new orchids in the same water with my older orchids, because I can transmit other pests like snails and mealybugs, which usually are found in the soil. There are also other stuff in the soil. I will not go into that subject. What I found in the soil, you don't want to know. So again, until I repot these guys, there's no way they're going anywhere near my other orchids. As for virus prevention, I believe quarantine is slightly useless, because a virus might not show signs and might not take over the plant until the plant is sick. So it can take a few months or a few years for a virus to actually start to attack the orchid. And if it's not spread through the orchid, it will not show up on tests sometimes. So again, quarantining them is not necessarily a measure for preventing virus spread. The best method is to make sure you don't have pests, you don't transmit pests that can chew and transmit the virus, and also you do not use the same water with all of your orchids. That's a different subject, however. So quarantining for a few weeks or a few months does not guarantee that you will learn if your orchid has a virus or not, unfortunately, but it's a very good control for pests and so on. Now I know that I need to take care of that orchid, need to disinfect it and take care of those aphids. Now I know some people suggest that you actually quarantine orchids in a totally separate room from the other orchids, and I totally understand that, and for those of you who can do that, it's a good idea. I personally cannot do that, and I believe this space between my orchids is quite enough to stop the pests from crawling to my other orchids. Usually if you don't have like wind in your balcony, they will not travel so fast. They don't usually do good with traveling on dry surfaces like snails and stuff, and if they don't actually touch leaves, they will not transmit it. And as you can see, my orchids here do not touch leaves as much as possible, so they will not necessarily jump. But yeah, I could understand why you want to quarantine an orchid in a totally different space area. I cannot. So at least this will do. Now, as I said, I keep them here for a few weeks or a few months. Depends. Now that I see that the orchid has an infestation, I will treat it and I will keep it here for longer than I would an orchid that does not have any pests. So, you know, it depends on the orchid and what I find. Of course, I will repot it, and of course, I do swipe the surface of my desk with alcohol periodically and so on. And yeah, that's basically it. As a summary, don't let your new orchids touch your older orchids. If you maneuver them, wash your hands before you place your hands on your older orchids. Do not use the same water from the new orchids with the old orchids. And yeah, just some basic rules, common knowledge rules, I suppose, and you should be quite okay. So yeah, thank you for watching this video. This was my idea on quarantining new orchids. I think it is a must. at least in a separate location. Keep the new orchids. It is a must, you never know, and keep them there at least for a few weeks, 6 weeks or so, or 3 months or something like that, until you figure out if your orchid is okay, until you repot it, and so on. Okay, so if you want to watch more videos from me, don't forget to subscribe. You can also leave me questions and suggestions for videos in a comment below, but please make sure in your G+ settings that people outside your circles can reply to you. If I never reply to you, that's probably why. And if you just want to stay in touch with me, you can follow me on Twitter, and you have the link in the description. Thank you again for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!